Hello everyone. The topic for today is properties. Right now I want you to pause the video so you can copy down your notes and then resume when you're ready. Most of these properties, the key is to match up the equation or expression with what it looks like. So for example, if we were talking about the commutative property, we would need to find an addition example that looked like this to make sure that it matches up, or a multiplication example that looks like this. But what I really want to point out is some of the keywords in the what it means column. So for the commutative property, that means that the numbers are changing, they're going to change the order. So the only way that this will work is if it's either addition or multiplication, and we have some examples here off to the side. For the associative property, the parentheses around the grouping of numbers will change. However, the order doesn't change. So if the order of the numbers changes and you have all addition or all multiplication, then it's the commutative property. If the order does not change and all we did was change the grouping symbols like the parentheses, well, then that's the associative property. For the identity property, that means that it's equal to itself. Okay, there's no change in the number. Okay, so if you thought about it, like you think of a mirror image. If you look at yourself in the mirror, you're seeing a reflection of yourself. Nothing's changing. So for an addition, we're just adding 0. Or for multiplication, we're multiplying by 1. The inverse property, well, when you add a number to its opposite, the sum is 0. So a plus negative a equals 0. You could also use regular numbers and say, 5 plus negative 5. Well, that's 0. Okay. For multiplication, when you multiply a number and it's reciprocal, well, the reciprocal is when you flip the fraction, okay, the product is 1. So let's put some numbers in there so you can have a better example. So if we had 3 times 1 over 3, well, the answer to that is 1. So we would have to figure out which property the expressions matched up with. Looking at a few examples here of these types of problems, looking at number 1, we have 8 times 1 and 8, and we're supposed to determine whether the two expressions are equivalent. If so, tell what property is applied. If not, explain why. Well, 8 times 1 is 8. So they are equivalent, so that eliminates choice A. Okay. The identity property tells us that if we multiply something by 1, we get the same answer. The associative property is when you have grouping symbols that split up the problem using parentheses, and the commutative property is when you move numbers around using either addition or multiplication. So these are equivalent, and the property that tells us that is the identity property. Moving ahead to question number 5. We have the same set of instructions. So we are looking at 7 times 6 times t. We need to determine if they are equivalent. Since all that is going on is multiplication, they are all going to be equivalent. So, or both expressions are going to be equivalent. And the property that tells us that, because we've got our grouping symbols and we just moved the grouping symbols, it is the associative property. Now I want you to answer question number 2 and question number 3 all on your own. Bring those answers along with any questions that you may have with you to class tomorrow.